Hi, long range hunting, and welcome back to episode 28 of our terminal ballistic testing, hunting versus match bullets. Welcome back, everybody. Now today we are looking at the Abram bullets. Now these are from a small company in Montana. It's called J&A Custom Ammunition, and these are quite an interesting bullet. They're brand new. They haven't been out that long, and I've already done one video on them. I did a couple tests on it, and now we're revisiting it at a lower impact velocity. Now let's break down the construction and design of the Abram bullets. Now, I actually tested these quite a while back, the original testing for them, and the original one was a 216 grain bullet. Now, it has a larger hole than the Sierra Match Kings. It's basically a Sierra Match King that's been modified. A lot of bullets do that similar design, and then they can change little things. But the problem with Sierra Match King and Hornady Boat Tail hollow points, Lapua Sonars, stuff like that, is it can end up clogging that tip. So you have a very small hole, and what happens, instead of it going in and opening up, it clogs, and that results in either penciling, or it's going to do what's called necking over, where that bullet is going to start tumbling and or changing directions, which is not something that you want. Now, in order to combat this potential issue, what some companies have done, including J&A Custom Ammunition, is they have enlarged that hole to prevent that. So that way you're lessening that risk, more reliable expansion. And so with the original 216 grain he sent me, the first test was at 2,700 feet per second, got a massive transition of energy. However, it was expanding too rapidly for that design. It did well, but it wasn't getting the necessary penetration that I wanted at that impact velocity. I gave that feedback to the owner, John, and he sent me these, which is the new 213 grain, which is ultimately the final design on these. Now, I tested these, and that was the first video I did on these, and had really, really good results. Really good transfer of energy for this type of bullet, and a really good permanent wound cavity. Now, as you can see though, the problem with it is that gel block. I'd been driving across the country over the summer, did, a crazy road trip with Junior, and the heat from that, and going in places like Arizona and everything, the plastic kind of melted into it and deformed it. And at the time I didn't have a heat gun, so you don't really see much. So I wanted to definitely revisit this. Now I've got a heat gun since then, and the gel is nice and clear for this one. And so we're going to dive into this and really show you what this bullet's made of. Now, as I said, this is like just basically a Sierra Match King. It has been improved for reliability, and so it's really not that complicated. It's a match style bullet, thin jacket, lead core, but it has that larger hole to prevent those potential issues. Now let's talk about the permanent wound cavity. Now, as most of you know, or anybody who's been paying attention, I use real untanned hides. I use real meat and gel that's cut to the correct depth for the anatomical correctness of that animal. This is representing a whitetail, and the reason I don't do bones initially is to show the differences. There are shots where you can impact that animal and have a bullet completely pass through without ever touching a bone. And so I want to show the worst case scenario, minimum impact velocity, and then we revisit it with bones. Now on this test, we represented a high shoulder shot. Now, the magic number that I give for most match style bullets, if you're looking at anything from the ELD match to the Berger hybrids, etc., you want that velocity based on that bullet, the construction of it, somewhere between 24 and 2,600 feet per second. Now, For that impact velocity, generally speaking, I recommend 2400. That is a golden number. You can go higher than that, but you got to know what you're talking about and what you're doing with that bullet. You got to understand those limitations, and not everybody does. So general rule of thumb, it won't ever have you go wrong, is that 2400 feet per second rule with bullets like this. Now this is a real shoulder. It's from one of my deer last season. As you can see, there's a nice little hole through it. And I used the extra meat I needed. So when you shoot a shoulder, there is actually extra meat. You'll be able to see from the video that it is much larger than it normally is. And I shot down on the bottom part, one, to make it in the middle of the gel, and two, this is a little bit thicker. It's really not that thick. I show shoulders all the time, you know, elk and all that. I've done elk shoulder tests and stuff, and the elk shoulder in this, the difference is 1/10 of an inch. So there's no big difference in the thickness, which is what matters. Now the elk is longer and it is wider, but the depth of penetration is all that matters. And we're talking very, very minute differences between these. And so 2400 feet per second impact velocity did a really good job as far as the performance of this. Max width of that wound cavity is around 2 inches, and it blew through there and gave a nice cavity. It opened up at the right time. There wasn't a lot of meat damage. It didn't it didn't blow up, as some people say. It went right through the shoulder, opened up where it's supposed to, and went through, leaving a nice permanent wound cavity. Now let's talk about the temporary wound cavity. Now, what is this? Well, you have two. You have your hydrostatic shock and your hydraulic shock. Now, hydrostatic shock happens under 2200 feet per second or over 2200 feet per second when you don't have proper bullet performance. Now, what is this? Basically, you're shooting a water-based mammal, and they have an elasticity point because of that. So when that bullet impacts, it's causing a displacement. That's what you see when that gel expands violently and collapses back. Now, a great way to think about this is dropping something in water. If you drop something in water, you're going to see a displacement happen, and then it's going to collapse back. And that's essentially what's happening. Now, when you're getting hydrostatic shock, you're not getting the same kind of damage. Effectively, what's happening is it's going to cause stuff to rupture, to break. It's going to cause bruising and damage, and then it's going to collapse back, and what's left is that permanent wound cavity, which is around the diameter of the bullet's expansion. The max width that gets is where it's going to be as far as your permanent wound cavity. So the more that opens up, the more transition of energy you're going to get, and the more wounding you're going to get. Now with hydraulic shock, you're actually stretching it beyond the elasticity point of the media. And so what's happening over 2200 feet per second with proper bullet performance is essentially, it's like taking a rubber band and stretching it in all directions until it explodes. This is where you're going to get wounding that's going to be larger than the bullet diameter. So you can have a massive cavity that's much larger, and the reason being is it's going beyond that elasticity point, and essentially you're taking your temporary wound cavity and creating your permanent wound cavity with that. So that's where you're going to really get that increased wounding in both the permanent wound cavity and in the temporary wound cavity. You can basically vaporize and turn chest cavities into soup. Now this clearly achieved hydraulic shock, and we'll take a look at it real quick. Now that was very impressive for the impact velocity. Again, it had the bones and everything. It blew right through them, gave us a nice transition of energy. And if you watch the trash can really closely, you can see it really dumped energy into that trash can, and that's steel. It bent that steel. So it really transitioned to energy well, not only going up into the sides, but it was enough going down, enough downforce to actually concave that trash can lid. Now this is great performance for this type of projectile and design. We had a potential of 2,737 foot-pounds of energy. I've talked about this before. Energy is only a potential. So just because your ballistic calculator says that doesn't mean you're actually achieving that type of energy dump. But it's very clear we got a very good energy transfer. The bullet penetrated through, which it should at that velocity, and gave really, really good performance as far as your permanent wound cavity and your temporary wound cavity. In conclusion, it is a good bullet. It's what I classify as in between a Sierra Match King and a Burger Hybrid. Burger Hybrid being the top tier of the boat tail hollow point style bullets and performance. So it's in between there. It's a good performing bullet. Now the Sierra Match Kings, when they do perform very well. But there's just those potential issues there with, clogging and penciling through, changing directions, etc. This eliminates that. Now, a lot of people, what they do with the Sierra Match Kings, and myself included, I've done, is you just simply drill the hole larger. But when you're enlarging holes, you're removing material, you're changing weights, you're changing BC, and you've got to be very careful that it's not going to affect your accuracy changing weights, because you are going to lose some. You got to make sure they're all even. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So this has kind of done all that work for you as far as it's already got a large hole. Well, I should say larger to prevent that, and you don't have to worry about it. It's consistent weights. This is a group I shot when doing the initial testing for it, so they shoot very, very accurately. I've got a lot of reports from the field from the owner showing me the terminal performance of these bullets from clients, and what I'm seeing in the field from them and what I'm seeing in testing is matching. I haven't had the opportunity to kill with them yet as far as hunting, but hopefully I'll get a chance in the near future to test those and film them and kind of be able to show you guys the difference in performance. But I've got a lot of bullets that I got to do that with, so it'll get stacked in that line. But ultimately, it's a good bullet. If you want to go with a small company, to that, some people that's important. But either way, whether you're supporting small companies and doing it that way, or you just want this style of bullet without all the downfalls of stuff like Sierra's, Match King, boat tail hollow points from Hornady, or the Lapua Sonar, stuff like that has these issues, this is a very good option. So good performance. It had reliable expansion across the board. So none of those potential issues we've seen so far when testing these, whether adding bones or without bones. Now, as many of you know, I'm not sponsored. I do feel the need to include this. I test a lot of different bullets. I'm independent. I don't accept sponsors or deals or anything like that. No quick pro quos. I just test stuff, give you guys the information straight, and then you guys can, go from there. You can look at the evidence and then choose yourselves what options you want. Now, I do rank bullets as far as, what's the best, what's this, that, and the other. And that's just to show you guys the performance and label those as what they are as far as ranking, but while providing factual data to back that up. That way, when you guys go in the field and you go to pick your bullet based on that construction, you guys have an educated idea of what you guys are going to do and what kind of performance to expect. And terminal performance is everything. Bullet construction design is everything in hunting. So I hope this has helped everybody. I hope it's been informational for you. If you guys have any questions, you guys can Google J&A Custom Ammunition and Abrams and, give them a call and you can talk to them. And, if you want any additional information on them or their bullets. Now I'm going to keep plugging away at these. I've got one more video to film. I did core locks at the same time I did the last two videos for episode 29. And that was dropping them down in velocity and doing a high shoulder shot. And so I'll get that filmed, the talking points, as soon as I can and get them up for you guys so you guys have a new video and more data to look at on different bullets. So everybody be safe out there. Happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video. And happy hunting!